Chris Hewitt, and welcome to the latest in our series of Empire Podcast spoiler specials. This one is dedicated to the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What's this, film 15 now? Something like that? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Over the next hour and a half or so, we'll be delving deep into the latest adventures of Star-Lord and his posse of otherworldly a-holes. And speaking of a-holes, I will be joined on this podcast by Helen O'Hara.
Wait a minute.
A-hole. You're the number one hole.
That's not a good
means.
thing. That sounds awful. That sounds worse.
You don't want to be a said hole.
That sounds worse, Chris.
Does it?
It's getting bad.
Saying to someone, you're my number one hole.
Yeah, that's
super
bad.
I can see.
I'm calling HR right now.
With the benefit of hindsight, it was perhaps not the best thing to say. Anyway, John Nugent is also here.
I'm more of a sea hole.
That's even worse.
What is happening here?
How is that even worse?
Human resources, come and save me.
All right.
I don't know.
But before we get into holes and all sorts of stuff... What?
We're not getting into any
holes.
holes.
Not getting into any holes.
That's not what's happening.
No holes will be filled during the course of this podcast. We're going to hear from the man behind the movie. James Gunn, of course, co-wrote and directed the first film, Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a wonderful surprise smash back in 2014. And he's back behind the typewriter, on his own this time, and behind the camera on the sequel. I spoke to him fairly recently about the movie. He was very candid and open about many of the film's twists and turns. And naturally, we didn't cover everything. There's some things I forgot to ask him and was kicking myself about afterwards. But that's okay. We'll cover that later on. As ever, this is a spoiler special, so if you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, highly to your nearest movie emporium, see the film, and then come back. This isn't for the newbies. Away, I tell you, newbies. Away! Alright, are they gone?
I think so.
They're gone. We can probably begin. Here is James Gunn talking to me. Enjoy. Delighted to be joined on the Empire Podcast by the writer and director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, James Gunn. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Chris, except for that Galactus shirt you have on there. Fox property, teasing me, tantalizing me with his greatness.
I love Galactus, and I was just thinking maybe, I mean, you got a deal to get Ego in the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe next time around.
Well, yeah, that's true. I think they're a little, Fox is a little more clear on what Galactus means to them than what Ego the Living Planet means to them.
They're not using him. He's just sitting there wasted.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But you never know. Let's start with Ego, actually.
Sure.
When you had finished Volume 1, and you'd set up the idea of Peter's dad, Mystery Peter's dad, did you know at that point it was going to be Ego? Was that the hope?
Yeah, around that point, I knew before the movie who his father was. Like, I knew that he was, a celestial, that he was a being of great power made of light that created himself. So I knew, what the origin of Ego is. I knew who he was. I don't think I decided upon Ego the Living Planet until around the end of the first movie. And I definitely didn't tell Kevin until after we, opened up and made a lot of box office opening weekend.
And more to the point, did you know he was a wrong'un?
Did I know he was what?
A wrong'un, a bad guy.
A wrong'un.
An evil person.
No, I knew his father was quite a bad guy. I knew his father's a very, very, I thought of him as a very, very bad guy. Yeah.
Okay.
And he is. He's really bad.
And he is, absolutely. And it's one of the interesting revelations about the movie, how Ego's plan unfolds. Can you talk about where that came from, the idea of the expansion? And
well, just quite honestly, I had discussions with, Chris Pratt and I early on in terms of what we were doing with the second movie. I think that in the wake of the first movie, both of us experienced this tremendous lift in our egos, basically, where we went from, he was the, chubby, supporting actor on a sitcom, and I was a guy directing cult, low budget movies. And suddenly after that, I could direct any movie I wanted, and he could star in any movie we wanted. Yeah. We went from having, everyone wanted stuff from us. And I really think that the movie, in a lot of ways, is about us and our relationship to that ego and not being destroyed by it, and allowing ourselves to still be ourselves and stay who we were before we started making the movie. Yeah. And that's really, to me, the personal story of Volume 2.
So to paraphrase White Goodman in Dodgeball, Peter's story in this is a metaphor that actually happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of interesting where Peter goes. I mean, it's about the apple falling very far from the tree.
Yeah.
In many ways, with his relationship with ego.
Well, I think the most important primary relationship in both Guardians of the Galaxy movies is really his relationship to Meredith Quill. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have it revealed that the secondary relationship is really his relationship with Yondu.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think ego exists in the movie in a lot of ways, just so we can have that. We can see what it is that Yondu means to Peter Quill. Again,
was that something that you had planned from the off? This idea that it would be almost a space version of My Two Dads with Peter caught between Greg Evigan and
it was very early on that I thought this is a story that could be a story about a young man in New York City who was raised by an abusive stepfather and finds out his dad is a Wall Street millionaire and, it gets taken in by him. And really, even though his stepfather's imperfect, he's his real father. He loves him, and that's the most important thing.
You mentioned Meredith Quill, how important she is to Peter and how important she is to the two films in general.
Yeah.
Obviously, you brought Laura Haddock back.
Yes.
Was part of that, to give her something to do again this time around, or was it also to plant a seed in the audience's mind, reminder of her importance to the plot and also Peter?
I think both of those things. I mean, I think it was to really tell the story. This is the story of Peter Quill's parents. We start with a flashback once again. We get to meet both of his parents, and I think we kind of get an idea about why she was in love with young Ego.
Yeah, well, you could not be.
Yeah, exactly. It's Kurt Russell.
Look at that scary, uncannily accurate CG Kurt Russell. What's going on?
It keeps getting better, doesn't it?
It does.
It keeps getting better. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be scary. Pretty soon, you're not going to need any actual actors.
I know. I know.
It's going to be weird. But what was the model for young Kurt Russell in that? Do you take it from used cars, or do you take it from something?
Yeah, it was mostly used cars era. That's we went through maps of different times in Kurt Russell's life, and it was mostly used cars era.
Yeah.
I wanted him to be. He's still older than Meredith Quill,
yeah.
And we actually aged down Laura a little bit as well. Which,
okay.
So Laura, Meredith Quill is in her late teens, very very early 20s at most, and Ego is still in his 30s. So there's a significant age difference between the two of them even there.
Wow. And again, the importance of Meredith in the plot can't be overstated. There's I think it's a really crucial line, which is Peter says, "You shouldn't have killed my mom and squished my Walkman."
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, which shows you. Well, I'm not sure which one is more important to him, but obviously, the squishing my Walkman is the punctuation on the moment.
But in a way, he thinks of them almost as the same thing, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think they are. They're very interwoven. It's funny because in that scene, I wrote a big speech that Peter Quill said about, because you can't love anyone but yourself and blah, 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 and they're sad and all this stuff. And it was this sort of moving speech. And then Chris and I came up with this, you should have killed my mom or squished my Walkman line and just put that. And I'm like, God, it's better. It's more simple. It's easier.
It works.
Yeah.
It's good. And again, going back to Meredith and Ego. Coming up with the Ego's plan, because it's a very intimate movie. It doesn't hop around necessarily the way The Last Guardians did. Once we land on Ego's planet, we're pretty much on Ego's planet for the rest of the film. And his plan involving Peter and trying to get Peter back into the fold obviously has a wider context in terms of the universe and threatening the galaxy. Is part of that you having to come up with a plot that means the Guardians of the Galaxy have to actually guard the galaxy, or?
I think it was, for me, again, it was really just about his ego overtaking everything and what that means to the character and what that means to the movie. And it was about Brandy, the song that they discuss and how, Kurt Russell sees that song or Ego sees that song. I interchangeably call the characters by their character name and by their actor name.
That's fair enough.
I used to never do it when I was younger. I never called the character by the actor name. And as I've gotten older, I probably call him Chris Pratt more often than I call him Peter Quill, because he is an element of Chris Pratt, and so when we're talking about it, it's Chris Pratt and Kurt Russell. That's what it is to the audience, and so I talk about it a lot in that way.
Absolutely. How much do you have to work on the reveal, holding back the reveal of Ego? That was the, I don't want to say the hardest thing about the movie, but it was the strangest thing about this movie because
early on when we were making the movie, I knew that we didn't reveal the fact that Ego was totally evil until, fairly, halfway through the film. And, and even then we just knew there was something wrong with him. And then we don't really learn how evil he is until about 2/3 of the way through the film. And I thought for sure in the marketing materials, we're going to have to sell the fact that this was about the Guardians fighting a living planet. I didn't think that Marvel was going to be as cool as they were in selling the movie and holding everything back from the marketing. Yeah. So it was a weird situation where you're telling a plot point that also has a relationship to what the marketing is, where the marketing is perhaps going to give away the plot point. And so then do I just give it away earlier in the film? There was a version of the screenplay where I had gave away the fact that he was evil in the very first scene. But what happened was we showed the movie to some test audiences, and most of the people in the audience didn't know that Kurt Russell was the bad guy. And I was like, shoot. So I actually went back and changed a couple of things in the movie a little bit so that it was even less, we were less aware that Kurt Russell was the bad guy. So that when it does come, which is a weird time. I mean, I think it comes when Mantis is talking to Drax and says, there's something here you don't know about. Yeah. And I think when that happens, the audience is automatically like, oh, wait a second. Yeah. There's, But
there are discomforting notes from the off. Mantis's body language around Ego is very telling.
Yeah, it is. I think she's such an uncomfortable character in general that how much of that is due to Ego and how much of that is due to the fact that she is just completely socially awkward is a question.
When did you hit upon the idea that just to really push Ego over the edge, he had killed?
Oh, I knew that from the beginning of the first. I knew that from long before, I knew that before I started the first movie.
Oh, wow.
I knew that when she was talking about a being of pure light in the first movie, in the first scene of the first movie, that was the man who killed her. That was always a part of what the first story was in my head.
Wow. And do you think Ego, he seems to be genuine about his love for Meredith. I think he sees it as a mercy killing almost in a way. Do you think he's bullshitting?
I think he feels those feelings of love. There used to be a little bit more in earlier drafts of the script where Ego was very fascinated by being able to feel, now that he has a human brain, he's able to feel these human emotions. So he's able to experience them. But he experiences them in a way that he doesn't really put any meaning or purpose on them. So that he experiences love, but he doesn't, he just thinks of that as a thing to overcome pretty simply, and he does it pretty easily. In some ways, that makes him worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, in the last movie, Ronan was pretty much of a sociopath and didn't have that sort of, and does that make him, better or worse? Who knows? But I think that Ego's a pretty bad guy because of that.
I don't know if you stuck around for last night's screening, but that admission from Ego provoked audible gasps.
That's
from the
it.
audience.
It has in almost every screening I've been in. It's a big gasp when they learn that. And it's funny because the audience, and that's it's one of the things about the movie that's difficult putting together because people are way more invested in Ego threatening the Guardians than they are in Ego destroying complete other planets.
Yeah.
And that's why the other planet stuff is kind of minimal in the movie. It doesn't have that much stuff happening. What we really focus on is the fact that he's about to kill Drax and Mantis and Gamora, and the thing that sets Peter off is the fact that he killed his mother. I mean, that's what, he just heard he's going to kill billions and trillions of people on different planets, and he's kind of going along with it. But when he hears that, he killed his mother, he's like, what?
That's too far, man.
Yeah.
And then he squishes a Walkman, and then all bets are
and
off.
Then he's that the Ego sealed his fate at that point.
Of course, Peter is completely unaware that through his actions on Ego's planet, that he has actually saved his granddad.
Yes.
I love that little cameo from Greg Henry.
Yes, it's a very small. I'm glad that you saw that. That's a pretty hard to pick out. That he's driving a Ford.
And then he shows up again at the end,
And
dancing.
he's dancing at the end. That's good too. Yeah.
Along with Jeff Goldblum. What the hell is Jeff Goldblum doing dancing in your credits?
Well, he's going to be in Thor Ragnarok, and so we had a little footage of him dancing. We're like, well, let's put this in. I was kind of, we really had a good time putting those credits together because end credits are never interesting. They're always just just black on white credits, almost always.
Yeah.
And so we, once we started putting 5 end credit scenes in, we wanted to have the credits themselves. We're like, let's make them cool to look at and fun to look at. Let's put fun stuff in there, and it made it really fun. And I think it makes it fun for the audience then to sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, you have the I Am Groot changed into people's credits. And,
and
then Goldblum turns up. I mean, personally, I think Jeff Goldblum should be in every credit sequence of every movie ever. Dancing or not dancing, just standing there, it's all good. But the credits are fun, and obviously it's partly meta joke about post-credit stings in Marvel movies.
Yes.
But also, you are setting things up.
Oh,
with these.
huge things.
Yeah.
Much more so than on the, in the first movie, we set up, we didn't really set up anything in the first movie. We had a cute thing with Baby Groot.
Yeah.
And then, we had the ending with Howard the Duck, which was really just a joke.
Yeah.
In this one, we set up Adam Warlock, which we're definitely setting up. We set up the fact that Kraglin has inherited Yondu's powers. We set up...
Is he now part of the Guardians, Kraglin?
No, I don't think he's part of the Guardians, but he's I would call him an adjunct member of the Guardians. He's around. He's not very good at using that arrow.
Does he have voting rights?
He doesn't have voting rights.
Oh,
I don't think, I think Rocket has all the voting rights in that group. But yeah, and then Stakar and his gang.
Yeah.
All those credit sequences were in the script except for the Stakar one. That one I came up with after the fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I liked the guys at the end, and I thought they were cool, and I liked the idea of creating a couple of characters that were even more screwy than Rocket and Groot, with Krugar and Mainframe, who are the two other characters, along with Alita and Charlie 27 and Martin X at the end.
Interesting. So that's pretty much the original Guardians team, isn't it, by and large?
Krugar and Mainframe were kind of Guardians at one point or another, but I thought, I'm all about the Krugar. I mean, I'm into Krugar. He's a sorcerer. He's got some Doctor Strange powers, but he can't talk. He's got no mouth. So we created these sort of. He talks through these sort of these occult emojis.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
we'll see all these people in 3, do you think?
I think that you have to wait and see. I think that I think that the plan is that we're going to try to work them in different places. But Kevin and I are talking about a lot of different paths that we could take with Marvel Cosmic and who's going to go where and what and how. You only have so much room for in Guardians 3. And I don't want to add 1 billion characters, especially because we're going to be coming off of Infinity War, where there's 1 billion characters. The Russos have been doing a great job with that. And so I think we want to stay a little more simple with the Guardians movies.
What I thought was interesting about this movie as well is that it doesn't set up the Guardians going into Infinity War. It doesn't set up anything. There was mention of Thanos, there's one mention of Infinity Stones, and that's it. It's a standalone, as I think any Marvel movie has been for a long, long time. Yeah.
I thought that was important. I mean, I think if anything, I think we set up a little bit of, for me, I'm always thinking about what the emotional lives of the characters are, and I think we set up a little bit of where Rocket needs to go by the end of that movie and what he is trying to figure out with his life. I think he's got to, he's the one with the most damage, and he's a very interesting character to me.
And before we get on to that, actually, I just want to ask about one other post-credits thing, which is Teen Groot.
Yes.
Now, are you...
That's adolescent Groot.
Adolescent Groot.
Not yet a teenager, more like tween Groot.
Tween Groot. Okay.
Haven't gotten to Teen Groot yet.
As with the last movie where you set up Baby Groot and then kept Baby Groot for this movie, are you planning to maybe keep that version of Groot around for the next one? Because that would be really interesting.
Well, Groot's going to appear in another 2 movies, or
of course.
before he's in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So I think we have to wait to see what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about Rocket a little bit as well, because the end of the movie is fascinating. I'm always a big fan of how Marvel movies end, and fascinated to see where you ended the film.
Yeah.
And you ended it on Rocket.
Yeah.
Close up of Rocket, tear running down his cheek.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that decision?
Well, I think that was a pretty organic choice. I think that Rocket is, he is the most. He and Nebula, I think, have a lot of things in common, and I think they're also the two most screwed up members of the Guardians. I think they, but Rocket is the most. He was a little animal who was incredibly innocent and was just living his animal life and was taken and, had experiments performed upon him, and he was turned into this thing. He is Frankenstein's monster. Never known any infection his entire life, doesn't know how to deal with it. A huge percentage of the movie is dealt with Rocket not being able to deal with intimacy. Yeah. He took on, this thing of friendship in the first movie, and he's obviously not equipped to deal with that in the second movie. And so he pushes everyone away, and he's an absolute jerk. And I think that that's something he needs to deal with. But I also think that he has no sense of purpose. I think he has whatever the opposite of purpose is, that is what Rocket has. Because people were brought into, life by other means, and he's just created by someone for something that he's not doing. And so I think at the end we see a little glimpse of him maybe having a glimpse of something more, he sees. And I think he feels a lot of guilt at the end. I think he is the only one in that group that would have been able to make the choice that he does, where he shoots Gamora and he stops her from getting off of the ship. Yeah. And he knows that Yondu's going to die at that point. He knows everything that's going to happen. He knows that Quill's going to live. He knows that Yondu's going to sacrifice his life, and he's letting Yondu do it. And that's something, we see that Gamora's not going to let happen. And we hear Drax, and Drax isn't going to let happen. He's yelling, where's Quill? Where's Quill? Where's Quill? But Rocket is a pragmatist, and he realizes that that's the way it has to be.
It's interesting as well that Yondu is the catalyst for that. This is a film of unlikely alliances: Drax and Mantis, Yondu and Rocket.
Well, I think Rocket and Yondu are. I think Rocket finds a father in Yondu that he never had. And I think that Yondu finds a second son in Rocket after, or maybe a third son. I would say Kraglin and Peter Quill and Rocket. And it's, I think for Rocket, making that sacrifice at the end is very difficult. And I think seeing the arrow is the sign of something beyond. There's something more, and that's the first glimpse he has of anything like that in his life.
Yondu's obviously given a much greater role in this movie. Also has one of the best lines. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. Yeah.
But the relationship between Yondu and Rocket is interesting. You have that moment between Peter and Ego where they're playing catch with each other with the ball. In a weird way, I've just kind of realized that the ravaging of the Ravagers sequence, as I'm going to call it now, that's their equivalent of playing.
That's their equivalent of playing catch.
Yeah,
they're both. Yeah. I mean, they are both murderous SOBs. They really are. Yeah. As is Baby Groot. So the three of them together really love to kill people, and it's a sort of strange aspect of Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, you're not going to see, you're not going to see, Black Widow and Hawkeye gleefully killing hundreds of people in some musical montage. It's just not going to happen. But we do have these three characters. I think there's a different sort of morality in outer space. I think it's even though they're technologically ahead of us, there's a sort of medieval philosophy in outer space that's much different than what we have here on Earth. I think we're a little bit more, in some ways, more advanced ethically than they are out there.
This is true, but did you get pushback in that sequence? Because that is, I mean, you set up the Ravagers. I mean, they are bad people.
They're bad,
and then terrible things happen to them.
Yeah,
and obviously it's a moment of glory for these characters. But were you worried about pushing it too far?
Yeah.
with Rocket. I
was afraid we weren't going to get a PG-13 rating because of that scene. So I was definitely afraid of pushing it too far. Though I think the only thing, there was never really, people liked the scene so much, that it was and it was a lot of work to do that scene. So it was something that people loved. So I never really had a problem with it. I think that there was question about when my buddy Evan, who plays one of the Ravagers, who basically curb stomps Baby Groot.
Yes.
He kicks him once, which everybody's cool with, and then he curb stomps him. There was some discussion about whether it was cool that he was curb stomping Baby Groot, and that was a matter of mixed opinion among my insiders.
That was the moment, yeah.
That was a matter of mixed opinion, but I felt like it was something that we needed to have because he's about to murder that man.
Vengeance is his.
Yeah,
absolutely. So it's what's the song in that sequence again? I wasn't.
Come a little bit closer by Jay and the Americans.
It does come a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And the music in the film is fascinating as well. Did you always start with Mr. Blue Sky? I mean, obviously you start with
no, not always. I went through a lot of different possibilities for that sequence, but I think Mr. Blue Sky is a song. Number one, I really love it. I've often said that if the Guardians had a house band, I think it would be ELO. We had a song in the first movie that I cut from the film, Livin' Thing, which I regret, sort of. And putting Mr. Blue Sky at the beginning is great. For me, Mr. Blue Sky is a very happy song. And Jeff Lynne says it's a song about a sunny day. It's that simple. But there's a very malevolent and scary ending to that song where it says, here it is, here comes Mr. Knight creeping over. Now his hand is on your shoulder. It's such a creepy ending to this song. And you realize, there's this brightness and wonder, but below it, there's something very dark and malevolent happening. And I think it's very much like what the movie is.
Yeah. And the idea to have the battle, the opening battle, happen largely in the background, out of focus, while Mr. Blue Sky plays, is amazing. It gets a film off to a great start.
I think that's a perfect Guardians thing. It's that the important thing is not the thing that's important in other movies. The important things are the little character moments and the little beats that are happening between the characters. And in this moment, that's what's important is Baby Groot having a good time and getting involved in mischief while everyone in his family is about to be murdered by this giant beast. What's so funny is that it takes so much work to do the background part, but really what people are watching is Baby Groot.
Absolutely. Which is you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's me dancing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And did you always end with father and son?
Yeah. That, since very early on. Listen, when I first wrote, I write very, very in-depth treatments. So that's where most of my writing gets done. The script is easy once I get done with the treatment because the treatment is so well beaten out and they're like 70 pages long. And
you have dialogue beats in there.
There's dialogue in there, jokes in there, there's photographs in there for reference and all sorts of stuff. But originally I couldn't kill Yondu. And I had him do the basic thing where, he does his sacrificial moment and then he's saved and he comes back to life. And the reason I did that was because I love Michael Rooker more than almost anyone in the world, for real. And I couldn't imagine making a movie without him. And I still, to this day, the one thing that I'm most frightened about is that I'm not going to have Michael Rooker beside me as I make the next movie.
Yeah.
But as I worked on it more, I realized that the true story was that he really was, going to sacrifice his life. And that's what was necessary for the story. And that was a hard, hard choice for me to make. So once I made that choice, then father and son became a part of the movie.
It's really fascinating because it's such a somber end to a movie that has been bright and fun and colourful. And it's a very interesting, you end on Yondu's funeral, you end on the ramifications it has on the other characters.
Yeah.
It doesn't end in an upbeat way.
Well, listen, is it upbeat or is it not? I think it's very, I find it very upbeat, upbeat, downbeat. It's like it's not.
It's not rabble rousing. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Yay! It's not. Hey, let's go off into space like the first movie. Precisely. I think it ends in a way, but it ends with meaning. There's things in there that get me choked up every time I see him. Every time I see Kraglin, doing that salute through the window and that, that joy because the man he loved, the man that was like a father to him is being acknowledged and getting everything that he'd been searching for and wanting for years and years is happening, seeing, Stakar and his line of, he did, yes, he certainly did, which is, my note to him was, that'll do, pig. That's what he's saying. And Sly got it right away. He's like, got it, and
Nice alone, the closet Babe fan.
I'm a huge Babe fan, actually. So I think that and then Rocket having that moment of hope at the end. We get the moment between Peter Quill and Gamora where she says that she loves him. Which I find very touching. She doesn't do it in the way that's the big Hollywood kiss, which we struggled with a lot, whether we should put a big Hollywood kiss in the movie. Mm-hmm. But I find that their relationship is based on friendship, and the way it ends is so much more real and true to who they are. And I think so that all those, the beautiful line, the joke of Drax of "So are you on the inside?" Yeah. Which is kind of beautiful too, because it's obvious he's learned how to use figurative language in a way that he didn't know in the first movie. So there's all sorts of little gems there at the very end of the movie that are upbeat. The Zune.
Yes. Was it always a Zune, by the way? Some people have written in, who've seen the movie already, asked me, was it meant to be an iPod?
God, no.
As I said.
That's so stupid.
The joke is it's a Zune.
The joke is it's a Zune. The joke is crackling. Believe me, we try to deal with Microsoft to get and they're like, we want nothing to do with the Zune. We don't have any, don't worry, don't put a Zune in. We don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, it's like it's the whole idea is that's how they get very distant messages of what's going on Earth, and in that case, I think the Zune is the basic mode of listening to music.
Absolutely. So obviously, I can see how much it's torn you up inside to kill off Yondu and Michael Rooker in this. Can you talk a little bit about the manner in which he goes, in which he bows out? He has a heroic ending, very similar to how Peter almost goes in the first movie.
Yeah, he very clearly makes a choice to sacrifice himself for the sake of his son, and gives him the line, he may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy. Yeah. And that's, I think, what the movie is. That is the core of the movie. Yondu is Peter Quill's dad, and it doesn't matter whose sperm he came from. What matters is who loved him and who raised him, and that was Yondu. The
interesting thing is that we see the very first time we meet Yondu in the movie, he's in a moment of reflection, and you can tell he's not happy with his loss.
Very unhappy. Yeah. And what a very Listen, I know that it seems that most the one who's being lauded the most in the movie for their performance is Michael Rooker, which I'm very happy about. But that's a very brave moment where he's without a shirt, his belly's sticking out. He's got his and he's in a room in a brothel with 3 robot girl whores, basically, and he's a completely unhappy guy.
Yeah, he's been through a very functional moment, I'm guessing, as well, at that point. Not a lot of joy in it for
no joy. He's been in that brothel too many times over the years, and there's something very sad about being in a brothel where I mean, being in any brothel is pretty sad, but being in one where the people who are, you're having sex with can't even really see you back because they don't really have consciousness is.
And the moment with Stakar, I mean, watching the film again last night, I realised how you were setting up Yondu's death from the off, with Stakar saying you'll never get the never get the funeral, you'll never get the colours.
Yeah, you'll never. The horns of freedom will not play over your grave, and you'll never have the colors of Ogard will not, which are what we see at the end, the colors of Ogard. And
just a couple of last things before we wrap up. Drax, everything he says and does in this movie is perfection. Yeah, and how difficult is it as a writer to deploy Drax and Baby Groot correctly? Because the temptation would be to just give them everything to do in scenes and just have them say silly stuff forever.
Well, no, because it's got to mean something, I mean, it's like it's got to mean something, and there's times I pulled back on Baby Groot, especially. Batista really killed it. He just killed it. He came in and he had upped his game from the first movie. He was the one with the least amount of experience on the first film, and so he learned the most between the first and second film, and got the most better of anybody in the cast. And that was a great thing. And I love Dave, and he and I work incredibly well together. And writing Drax is very easy for me.
And Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Listen, I think it's just a matter of who, when Peter Quill was a kid, who would he think of as his big heroes? And we know about Kevin Bacon. We heard a little bit about John Stamos in the first movie, but I think David Hasselhoff is really the guy who he really looks up to. And I found a certain amount of humor in it. And so that first scene was the first scene I wrote between him and Gamora, where I always loved Gamora saying, maybe this man is your Hasselhoff, and then the idea that he's still carrying around a photograph of Hasselhoff in his wallet. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, then we have the big joke moment where Kurt Russell takes on the form of Hasselhoff, which is a very funny moment, but it's also an incredibly dark moment because you realize everything that Ego has done has been basically to seduce Peter Quill. The form of Kurt Russell is the form of Kurt Russell. It's not really who that guy is. So there's that, and then the speech at the end, which I really love, Peter Quill's speech at the end about Hasselhoff and Yondu and how they're the same person, and that thing that you wanted so badly was there the whole time. You just didn't know it.
I was just going to say that I said earlier on that there were no connections to previous Marvel movies, but of course Hasselhoff was Nick Fury.
Yeah, in the old school, yes, yeah. And let me tell you, David's the nicest guy. He's the best guy, and we recorded the song for the end of the movie, and he's a great guy. It was a joy working with him, having him come in. He was the first guy I've ever worked with that people were starstruck on set, and suddenly crews, and you've been on movie sets before, like crews are used to being around movie stars, and they're always a little bit deferring and whatever, but David Hasselhoff, the crew themselves formed a big line to get their picture taken with him after he came in and shot for 2 or 3 hours, however long we shot that bit for.
Well, of course, he's got a talking car.
He's got a talking car, yeah.
He's huge in Germany.
Yeah. I think it's a magic boat, yeah.
So
we have a Zardu. We made Zardu Hasselfrau shirts. That was like one of the departments. Like I think the sound department maybe made Zardu Hasselfrau shirts. That
really,
and it has a picture of Hasselhoff's face. It says Zardu Hasselfrau, and it has a magic boat on it.
Amazing. And just really quickly, we run through a number of planets as in that great sequence where Rocket and Yondu are jumping through the
yes, yeah.
That's weird and freaky. I loved it.
That's just the funniest thing in the movie to me. That's the one thing that makes me laugh every single time I see the one shot of Rooker with his mouth huge, screaming. This makes me laugh.
What planets do we bounce through? Are they delineated in any way, or is it just random planets?
Most of them aren't delineated. I think that we don't really, we just try to make the craziest places we possibly could. Yeah.
And you got Stan Lee.
And then we got Stan Lee, he's working for the Watchers, apparently.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. Where did that idea come from?
The fans, I think, have always had this Stan Lee is the Watcher theory. And so I love the Watchers, and I thought it would be a fun thing to put in the movie it makes sense that he's it kind of makes sense. It kind of doesn't make sense too, but having him work for the Watchers, I think worked. And I loved putting him in like that fishbowl, spacesuit. That sort of, what is it Wally Wood? It was the old, comic artist did that sort of old pulp looking spacesuit.
And it's validation of the theory.
Yeah,
as you say, it's that he has. Yeah. It's the same Stan Lee in all the movies.
Yes, exactly.
So he's a FedEx man.
It's always Stan. Yeah.
And just a couple of last things about the soundtrack. You use the chain twice. That's interesting. Can you talk about that?
And I used Brandy 3 times.
Brandy 3 times, yeah.
Well, I think, in this movie, the chain acts as sort of a theme song for the Guardians. In a way no song really has. And so I think that we hear it once, and we hear it once. It's a song that's about a potential breakup, and we hear the song once, and it's about the breakup, and then the next time we hear it, it's about that they can't break the chain. They're going to be together, and you cannot break it. There's something between those characters that will never be broken.
Yeah, it's the evolution from friends to family.
Yes,
I mean this movie talks about family as much as Fast 8 does, but here for me it comes from a very genuine place.
I hope so. Yeah.
And then just one last thing, the soon 300 songs.
300 songs, yes.
I mean, you're going to have your work cut out for Volume 3, aren't you? I mean, that's...
Well, I don't think we need to put all 300 of them in Volume 3. I mean, I think that, we can save a few songs for later.
Have you started thinking about the songs yet?
Oh my God, I'm killing myself over it. I won't say I have it all worked out because I don't. I know a lot of Volume 3 stuff of what's going on, but the music is a hard thing to figure out.
You'll do it.
I'll figure it out.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
James Gunn, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so that was James Gunn, and now we're going to get into the meat of the movie and talk about some of the stuff he obviously talked about, but some things I didn't talk about, like we were just saying here, Helen, how I forgot to ask him about the fact that this movie is set roughly 2014, 2015 at a stretch, because it takes place 34 years after 1980. So put my information into the calculator here. 2014.
That's amazing, Chris.
Unless, of course, Meredith Quill didn't have Peter until late December of 1980, in which case 14 years... No, it'll still be 2014.
But she wasn't visibly pregnant in that clip.
I thought she was like,
like maybe a little bit, but like
a little glowing.
Yeah, but it's 34 years later, so logically it'd be
2014.
2014.
Again, you've nailed me there on the logic point, haven't you?
With
so
mathematics.
2014. I think another reason for them setting it 34 years after. You were going to say your theory.
Well, it is not just my theory. It is out there on the internet that this is to allow Baby Groot to grow up, basically, before Infinity War. So we've got a more powerful Groot back on side, and of course we see in one of the many post-credits things the teenage Groot, so he's clearly growing fast. So this film is set really only a few months after the first film, so Groot actually grows quite quickly, is the theory. Like
the life cycle of Ridley Scott's Alien.
That's another spoiler special, Chris. We'll come back to that.
Okay, we'll do that another time. Another time. Yeah, one of my theories as well was that it was so that Star-Lord would be 34 years old and not 37, and it just feels to me that there's a whole thing about perception of stars and aging and.
You think they're lying about his age? Marvel is basically lying about his age.
I think if Chris Pratt were seen to be 37 in this film, I mean, James Gunn and I had a chat about how the film is, revolves around ego, and I just wondered if maybe a little bit of that bled into the off-screen stuff. Just a small thing. But would you rather be considered to be 34 years old or 37 years old?
I mean, I think that's a trick question. But 34?
I will also take 34.
So the whole film is about lying about Star-Lord's age?
No, I think Star-Lord is 34.
Okay.
But I think it's about making Chris Pratt 34 rather than 37.
Right.
Yeah?
Fair enough.
It's just a small thing. Just a small thing. Anyway, one of the things we did was I asked for you to send me in your questions about this film. And my God, I think we have probably broken the record here for the number of questions we've had for a film. Many of them cover the same ground. That's fine. But people have been sending questions to me via Twitter DM. So
Fancy.
You guys haven't seen these.
No.
So we're going to be tackling
We're
them.
super prepared.
Super prepared, super blind. But before we do, let's just get a general overview of what you felt about the movie and where you feel it fits into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as an entity. John.
I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. As a film within the MCU, I thought it was really interesting when you compare it to something like Civil War, which is inescapably intertwined with the rest of the universe. And this didn't feel like, there was much connection to it. I mean, the original Guardians was very much its own entity first time around.
Yeah.
It sort of existed above and beyond the sort of the Avengers side of things, and this one even more so. I really felt like it stood out on its own. I think I agree with your sort of 4-star review, Chris. I think it's
so do I.
I'm glad you still stand by that weeks later.
Actually, there's some things I don't stand by.
Okay,
it's interesting because you see a film a couple of times. You see the film once and you write the review, and then you see it, because it was spoiler special. So I saw it again, and there were certain things that I didn't like about the film that eased somewhat for me on the second viewing, and then on the third viewing I completely Stockholm syndrome myself into loving it, and now I think it's a 10-star film, so I'm totally on board.
We don't
with it.
have 10 stars, so this is pretty exciting.
Well, I've only seen it the once, and
Get
I
out.
don't know. Yes, I know this is I'm not quite as obsessive as you guys, but
Boy.
Professional, I think is the word you're looking for.
Professional, that's correct. I think I would enjoy it as much the second time. I think the thing I feel about this movie is I think there are some problems with it. Unavoidably, I think there are some things about characters and plotting that maybe are a little weak. But it's such a ride. It's such an enjoyable thrill. I think it's funnier than the first movie. I think it's in some ways more entertaining than the first movie. I think the joke rate is really high, and it's really colourful and well executed and just likeable. So yeah, it's hard not to get on board.
Now this is going to be
This
may surprise some people. But Helen, who like me has been drinking the Marvel Kool-Aid since the beginning,
delicious.
Not such a fan of this film, are you?
No, I did like it more the second time, but I really didn't like it the first time.
Tasty Kool-Aid.
Tasty
Have some more of this Kool-Aid, and you will soon see. You will come around to my way of thinking.
I agree about the look of the film. I loved how it looked and how colourful and outrageous it was.
Funhouse.
We're going to have to talk about the whole connections to the rest of the MCU because I do think that's a really interesting point, and it's something I want to touch on. But my problem was I didn't find it as funny as the first film, and I find it really kind of slightly chaotic, and I like my films to feel more streamlined is the wrong word, but just propulsive maybe. I don't know. It
meanders, doesn't it?
It meandered a lot, and it meandered through territory that irritates me, like daddy issues. And
we know you have daddy issues.
And also like just little unnecessary annoyances like, you've got your space pirates who are virtually all men, Michelle Yeoh aside, and they go to brothels which are entirely female, which seems like a failure of imagination. And it just...
But the robot brothels, Helen.
Yeah, the robot
brothels.
Yeah, but all female robots. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you don't see everything on that planet. There might be an all-male brothel.
But like,
there,
I was looking at the skyline second time around, and they're all female signs. Okay. Like, it's a missed opportunity to be, forward thinking and think outside the confines of Earth.
The Ravagers don't seem like a very forward thinking group. Anyway, the Ravagers is something that we will get onto, and that's one of my.
So there
issues.
were irritations. I find it annoying that I get that Gamora and Nebula are much more serious characters than everyone else, but I felt like they had to do all of the seriousness while the guys were off having all of the fun, and it just kind of wore on me a little bit. So yeah, I like, there's a lot to love in it. Baby Groot, obviously adorable. Rocket Raccoon, I felt was slightly marooned. He had a storyline and then it just kind of dropped away to nothing, which I thought was a shame. Drax I liked a lot. Mantis, I had big problems with how they treated her. Star-Lord I found strangely absent.
He's peripheral, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's weird because the film is...
It's all about him, and yet not.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you probably boil it down to screen time, weirdly, he probably doesn't get as much as who? Well, Rocket or Yondu. I mean, not in my interview, but in another interview, I read that James Gunn said that he considered Yondu to be the main character in this film, which is slightly weird. But then, if you listen to the interview with James Gunn, he actually begins to almost tear up when he talks about not working with Michael Rooker and taking the decision to kill Yondu in this film really tore him apart. So you can maybe see why he gave him something big to get in, to get his teeth into, his manky space teeth into with this one. I think this film is flawed. I think it is, but it is enormous fun. And the first hour, and I'm going to repeat myself in my review, the first hour is tremendous fun. Everything I think Drax does and says in this film is perfect.
Yes.
The Baby Groot opening scene with Mr. Blue Sky, which I nailed at karaoke the other night, by the way. I really didn't. I've never sung it before. It was like, oh, this song's much harder to sing than it seems. Oh my god! But that is one of the great opening sequences for me.
My only issue with Baby Groot is his intelligence waxed and waned with no kind of logic, and I couldn't figure that out at all.
Oh yeah, it's just like babies. Sometimes they can open doors, sometimes they can't.
Babies could open doors.
Sometimes they can open tins. Don't you ever give your babies, like, you don't have any babies?
I don't have any.
Yeah. Sometimes babies can murder men
or rats.
Yeah. Sometimes they can. Sometimes you give them a tin opener and they open the tin. Sometimes they just look at it and try and don't give your babies tin openers. Is basically the moral of this story. But I love that opening sequence. But I do feel that the film meandered quite a lot, and you know, as I say in the review, about an hour in, it realizes that A, it has to have a plot, and B, it has to have a bad guy. Now, obviously, the seeds for that plot and the seeds for that bad guy, literal seeds, are sown right from the off. So it's not entirely fair, I say, to say that this film doesn't have a plot. It does. It just takes its sweet time really getting there.
Yeah.
In fact, I know one fairly prominent screenwriter, who I will not name on this, who walked out of the film because he didn't like the fact that the bad guy took so long to A, reveal himself, even though I think it's a revelation you can see coming a mile away, and B, explain what the big plan was, a big master plan. So I think it's very interesting. I
Yeah, because they're not reacting against anything really until...
No, they're not. Basically, you're just watching Peter Quill and his friends just hang out, just chill around. And there's a red herring, a golden herring bad guy with Aisha, the high priestess of the Sovereign, you think is going to be the baddie. And I really had a lot of fun with Elizabeth Debicki and her performance.
Yes.
But it's clear, I think, from the off that these are not the bad guys. And of course, if you're paying attention at the beginning, you know that it's Kurt Russell is up to no good.
Yeah. And at the beginning, can we just say the de-aging makeup comes on in
Oh my
goodness.
bounds.
God.
That was
Goodness me.
astonishing.
To de-age Laura Haddock like that by a couple of years. I mean, she looks amazing. Oh, you mean the other one?
I meant the other one,
The
Chris.
other
Yeah,
person.
super good. Yeah.
Kurt Russell. It's
Russell.
It's
I mean,
astonishing.
Was that real hair? Was that CGI hair? Because it was luscious and bountiful. My God.
I'm assuming it was real. Nothing CG can create that much beauty so far. So sorry, guys. I apologise.
I don't know.
Stirring my loins in places I
Good Lord.
did not know had been stirred by a man before. Sorry, carry on.
You all right? You all right?
Wow.
give me a minute.
Need a moment?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it looks amazing. I mean, the Michael Douglas in Ant-Man was freaky. The young Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War was freaky.
Really impressive, yeah.
This is like if you wanted to make Used Cars 2 with young Kurt Russell. Why would you want to make that film? I don't know, but it's a great film.
Overboard 2.
Overboard 2.
This time he goes overboard.
We can finally resolve the end. That would be amazing. We can finally resolve the ending of The Thing. We can finally do it. We can go back. Because I've always thought if they wanted to make a sequel to The Thing, you know, and pick it up at the moment of the ending, you'd have to either cast Wyatt Russell, who does look a little bit like his dad, dye the hair, and I think he can maybe get away with it. Or you're shit out of luck. Not anymore. Get young Kurt. He's available.
I don't want an extra ending to The Thing, though. I like it ambiguous.
Yes.
Like that. I want to leave it as it is.
So does Chris, really.
Yeah.
Right, Chris? Right?
Childs
God.
Childs is a thing. McCready is not.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
Okay, fine.
All right. Okay.
I would say though, I think Peter Quill is probably the weakest link in this movie. And if you follow Andrew Ellard on Twitter, he's a fantastic script editor and occasionally formerly of this parish. And he had some great notes on this movie, and he talks about how the Peter Quill plot is sort of the weakest element of it, and it's the subplots that really prop up the movie. And how Ego's plan is essentially to tell him his entire plan. Like, there's no sort of eking it out of him. Like, he literally just he tells him the nice part of his plan, and then eventually he tells him the evil part of his plan.
Yes.
Do you see he eventually just says that was all he was going to do.
I do. I think Ego is all about ego.
Yeah,
and I think
that's weird, isn't it?
I know, but I think that he thinks that he has Peter on his side by the time that he reveals the bombshell about Meredith Quill.
This is Andrew Eller's tweet. Ego basically says, "I gave your mum cancer and want to kill everyone and everything you care about. Are you in?" That's his plan, just to say that.
He's so egotistical that he thinks he does. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Of course, Peter's going to be on board with this
because this plan is so awesome.
Because of the cool powers and the living forever and the being able to hold Infinity Stones and the being able to turn into Pac-Man and. You know, of course, and playing catch with his dad. He finally got to play catch with his dad. I thought it was a really fun scene.
It was
really
funny, but
really deliberately cheesy.
BC, when you have the issue about daddy issues, I thought that was a nice, it's a self.
Yeah, that was sly. I did think that
they're
was
mocking the idea of daddy issues with that ball throwing scene.
I mean, do you have daddy issues? I don't know if I have daddy issues.
Do you have issues with daddy issues?
I have issues with daddy issues.
Daddy issues,
yeah,
issues.
I just think it's a massively
it's been done a million
overused
times.
plot.
Yeah.
But I think we just don't have daddy issues, but other people
I
clearly
know, I
do.
get that people have daddy issues. Like, I understand. I mean, Beyonce has a song about it, so you know it's a real thing. But
It's Spielberg's entire career, and I think
Yes.
Spielberg is, quite an influential director. So perhaps there's a.
But he does genuinely have daddy
Oh
issues.
no, he does.
Steven
He
Spielberg.
yeah. And that's been lived out through his entire.
But you put yourself in Peter Quill's shoes, and he feels that he's gone through his life without. He's had father figures, but they've been blue space pirates with manky teeth, who've been effectively abusing him all these years. And he's never really known who his true dad is. And so I did actually buy into that. And his reluctance
No, I
at the
got
beginning,
that it existed.
his faux reluctance to
Yeah.
kind of go, I'm not buying it. He's some dude. And but he knows that that's his dad.
I think, listen, I'm not saying
Yeah.
it wasn't well done. I'm saying I'm super bored of daddy issues. That's all.
But did you like the fact that it was his mummy issues that ultimately saved the day?
It. Well, I would
got
like it
back?
more, but again, the only thing that's more worn out than daddy issues is dead mummy issues. So it's.
Well, what do you want them to do, Helen?
I don't know.
It's a bit
Keep the
tricky.
mum and dad, and not just have a well balanced relation. I don't know. I just don't think everything needs to go back to your origin. It doesn't matter always. It shouldn't always be about where you come from. Sometimes it should be about where you're going, and that's where a more propulsive, forward-looking plot would have been nice. So, but I can't have that. I get it. I understand. I'm just carping because that's what we do.
Well, it's a film about it is a film I think is dominated by the idea of family. In a family. It's the second Vin Diesel Kurt Russell film of the month to be obsessed with family, and it's the only one I think that means it. Fast and Furious uses the word family, and there's not an ounce of actual.
Hey now, come on.
Well, no, I wasn't here
What are
to
you
talk
talking
about
about?
Fast and Furious 8, but I did see it on the same day I saw this for the second time, and.
You're just determined to be wrong, aren't you?
I-
You're going to be wrong.
I had
You're going to
more
say
fun.
something wrong.
I had more fun. Although I have
Any
big
family
issues.
with The Rock in is a better family. Come on.
I have big issues with Fate of
It's
the
a
Furious as
stronger
well.
family.
But yeah, I probably had more fun with that.
But it is a movie obsessed with family. We have Nebula and Gamora, sisters, again with massive daddy issues. We'll talk a little
But
bit more.
slightly more earned, I think, in that case. I like that.
Yes. And there's some interesting foreshadowing and setting
Yes.
up, I think, of Nebula as a character who may surprise us, I feel, in
Infinity War.
War.
I agree.
Obviously, she plays quite a big role in the comic books in terms of her relationship with Thanos. That's how people say it.
Thanos.
I'd say Thanos, but the official pronunciation now is Thanos. Weird. I don't know. Anyway, so there's interesting stuff with Drax and Mantis. I thought that was a lovely relationship because it's filtered through Drax, who's just a weird character, but you can tell he has incredible affection for this surrogate daughter. I think that's the relationship that they're setting up there with those two, not, as some people suggested, sexy fun times ahead. I think Drax genuinely finds her repellent, which is
That's right.
one of the fun jokes. Okay, should we get on to some questions?
Sure.
So a whole bunch of people, including at Your Turn Heather, asked about
hello.
the Jeff Goldblum thing at the end. James Gunn, he said, "Oh, it was just a bit of fun to have Jeff Goldblum in." I didn't push him on it because I didn't have a lot of time, but I do wonder if there might have been a deleted scene with the Grandmaster.
Was
in
there a
here at some
flash
point.
of the arena from
He says
Thor
it isn't.
Ragnarok
He
as
says
well?
it's
He says
just.
it's not.
He says
Okay.
it's just a planet. It's just a
Right, fine.
random planet. But again, you never know. You never know. But I loved that. I thought it was just a really interesting bit of fun.
But that does bring us on to this question of ties to the rest of the MCU, which seem like far looser.
Oh yeah,
Here
there's
than-
few and far
than things.
between. Definitely.
And I think partly it's because James Gunn, knocked it out of the park both critically and commercially first time around, and has sort of been given, I think, a pretty blank slate
He seems to have been given the freedom in this movie that Joss Whedon was absolutely not given
on Age of Ultron. I agree.
which surprised me a little bit.
But I think Age of Ultron, maybe because it did have the Avengers, has more linkage to do. I was surprised by the total lack of obvious linkage to Infinity War in this movie.
This movie actually has at one point Peter Quill saying, "Earth, why would I want to go to Earth? My mom died on Earth. I'm never going to Earth."
Yeah.
And I would imagine, given that They showed some pap shots last week of a life-size Rocket Raccoon stand-in at Durham Cathedral. I would imagine that at some point in Infinity War, the Guardians do pitch up on Earth. I thought maybe they'd be confined to space. Maybe they'd be hanging out in space because there's some Infinity Stones scattered around in space still. But yeah, now it looks like they will come to Earth. So Peter Quill's going to come to Earth. But yeah, this film does not end with the Guardians going right.
But even the post-credit stings were not terribly obviously Infinity Stone-y.
Yeah, the post-credit scenes set up Kraglin beginning to learn how to use Yondu's arrow, which is as far as I'm concerned, one of the WMDs of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That thing is, I mean, we're going to talk about the Ravagers Massacre, which, spoiler alert, is the thing I had an issue with in my review. A lot of people have emailed me and asked me, I had phrased it in a way that wasn't spoilerific in the review, but I said it's something, a moment of triumph that becomes a tasteless misstep. And a lot of people wanted to know what that was, and I went, it's the bit where literally like 100 dudes are killed to jaunty pop music, and they went, oh yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about it later on. So it sets up Kraglin. It sets up the potential new Guardians team, which is the Stallone
and Michelle Yeoh and
Ving Rhames,
and
Miley Cyrus.
Sure.
Genuinely, that's Miley
No,
Cyrus.
I know.
Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
sure. That's, for the most part, the original Guardians,
Yeah.
the 1969 Guardians.
We've got teenage Groot, so he's growing up again, so he's more able to be a physical force to be reckoned with.
Genuine, that's
By
pure
Infinity
comedy.
War. Yeah.
And then the biggest one is Adam Warlock.
Yes, but that feels like a Guardians 3 thing, not an Infinity War thing.
Now this is just my theory, and a few people have written into me and said, "What about the screw up with Adam Warlock?" And at first I was a little baffled by that, and I'm sorry if I didn't get your name. We might get to it at some point, but I'm flying blind here. Some people asked me about the screw up because in the Collector's Lair in the first Guardians, there is a pod that you can see in the background, and James Gunn has said in interviews that was Adam Warlock's birthing pod. That was meant to be Adam Warlock's birthing pod, and they're going, "Oh, it's a screw up now because this is Adam Warlock." Well, I think this is just a case, again, this is something I didn't discuss with Gunn, but I think this is a case of a director going, that was not established absolutely 100% on screen in the first one, and I've thought of a better way to do it. And that's okay. And it doesn't affect anything in the first Guardians, and this, for me, is a better way to get Adam Warlock into the MCU.
Yeah. The fifth post-credit thing, was that Stan Lee?
Stan Lee! Greetings. Hey, guys, I need my lift home. Hey, where are you going? Oh, no. Oh, gee.
No, this was one of the 4 cameos he filmed in a day, right?
Yeah.
He did this.
Presumably he did
Presumably
Thor,
Ragnarok,
and Spider-Man
Strange,
Homecoming.
and Spider-Man.
Must have been those 4.
Yeah.
And this is the one that confirms
Yes.
The shared Stan Lee universe theory.
That it is one Stan Lee going to different places with
on
his
behalf
good mates.
of the Watcher.
Yeah, the Watchers. Extraordinary. Stan Lee is not a Watcher, he is just a friend of the Watchers.
Yeah.
So it doesn't entirely film it. One person did point out a possible screw up here.
Ooh.
Okay, so Stan Lee is going, hey, in that time I was a FedEx guy, and that's his reference to his cameo in Civil War. Mm-hmm. But Civil War takes place in 2016.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, James Gunn, Kevin Feige, if you're listening to this, you need to reshoot the entire
No,
film.
but like it's space.
In Age of Ultron,
Time travel.
He's one of Steve's veteran buddies, right? He presumably served in World War II.
No, he just like finagled his way in there.
Oh right, okay.
Probably.
All right. Oh, about the Adam Warlock thing.
Sure.
You're saying that you think this is set up for Guardians 3. I think it is as well, even though he's a huge part in the comic books of the fight against Thanos and Infinity War and Infinity Gauntlet and all that sort of stuff. This is not an adaptation of that book.
Yeah, it is. I don't think there's too much heavy lifting to introduce him as a character.
Plus
have
Captain
him be a
Marvel.
bad guy and then get involved. Yeah.
I can confirm that. In fact, Slash Film spoke to Kevin Feige and he said, and I quote, "Adam is not in Infinity War. This is not a tag for Infinity War." So,
well, there you go.
There you go.
Oh, they spoke to Kevin Feige. Did they?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't over.
Well, at least you're not bitter, Chris.
I'm not bitter. It's totally fine. But you liked it, Kevin. All right. So here's a Twitter question. Sorry. Here's a Twitter question from @Charles33_8round. Oh, Charlie Brown. Okay, I got it. Okay. Loved the review almost as much as the movie. Oh, that's very nice. Lovely.
Oh my God, you just read that.
I didn't mean to read that out. Start.
Why did you pick this question, I wonder?
Start from this bit. Don't start from that bit. Your review, Chris, moved me. Where does Yondu's death rank among the MCU deaths? Do you think too much time was spent on the funeral or just enough? Before we get into that, I will say this.
Okay.
This surprised me. First time round, yeah, fine. Okay, Yondu's died. It's a funeral. It's okay. Interesting. Downbeat ending for the Guardians film. That's intriguing. Second time around, moved me a little bit more. Third time around...
Waterfalls. Don't go chasing them, Chris.
I shed a single tear.
Oh, a single man tear.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not saying for my eyes necessarily, but
Chris.
But it genuinely moved me. It moved me, and not just the whole thing with Yondu and Peter Quill and the faintly ridiculous speech by David Hasselhoff, but
Faintly?
the ridiculous speech by David Hasselhoff, but just generally, I found myself moved by where Rocket was. And I think part of that obviously comes from having talked to Gunn and being a little bit more attuned now to what he was going for with that character. But I think the decision to end on that very, very lovely, sad song, Father and Son by Yusuf Islam, as he is now credited,
Yes.
is really, really nice. And ending on Rocket crying, it got to me. Which is interesting because I'm like you. I didn't think Rocket was hugely as well served as he could have been.
No, I don't think it was. Because the whole thing is like at the beginning of the film, they set up this conflict between Rocket and Quill for like sort of control and, you know, certainly piloting of the ship. And then they just never deal with that whatsoever. And that kind of annoyed me. So the stuff with Rocket and Yondu would have worked a little better if that had been the focus from the beginning, but it wasn't, and it just irritated me. Anyway, but I thought Yondu's death, first of all, the big thing for selling it for me was not just Rocket, it was Sean Gunn's performance.
Yes,
Caglan. He sells it. He sells it when he says that they all turned up, they all showed up.
Yeah, the moment where he beats his chest.
Yeah,
and
he's visibly on the edge of tears. That is what kicks it.
That's
and also there is massive deliberate, I think, references there to this Spock's funeral, the classic tearjerker death in a sci-fi movie. If you don't cry at Wrath of Khan, I don't even know what to say to you, man. Seriously, but I think there was a definitely deliberate echo of that in that whole scene.
I'm also a sucker for the sort of light show.
Yes.
Of a big Marvel funeral.
Yeah.
When Frigga dies in Thor: The Dark World, and that's a really lovely scene in a film I know a lot of people have a problem with, but I really that scene moved me as well.
It was a real opportunity for a big, literally to go out with a bang. I thought, visually it was so impressive in a film that is not short on visually impressive CGI. I mean, we might get a chance to talk about it later, but the Ego's homeworld is just...
It's gorgeous.
Astonishing, and it really shows. I mean, CGI can be used really well if it's used with care and thought and artistry. I don't think there's anything wrong with this film that is majority CGI if it's done well, and I think it's done really well in this film.
I think generally if CGI isn't done well, it's not the CGI's fault, it's generally the film makers.
Yes, exactly. It's not about CG apathy so much as how you use it.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, you could level some accusations of that at this movie. The final showdown between Ego and Peter.
Yes.
When Peter turns into Pac-Man, it's a funny idea, but it just felt a little bit too far for me. But the thing I've felt about this movie and the likes of Civil War and Winter Soldier is that people talk about the Sturm und Drang of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think that there's enough character moments, and in amongst all the pixel frenzy, you can go to Nebula and Yondu having that funny moment on the spaceship, or that the confidence to stage a scene between Rocket and Groot, baby Groot with the bomb, and Quill off in the background going, "Does anyone have tape? Anyone have a tape?" and he just holds that shot for so long. The confidence to have those moments and those character beats within that, and I love these characters as much as anyone in the MCU. Really brings it home for me.
As much as Cap.
I would say if I were to put together a top 10 list of my favourite Marvel Cinematic Universe characters, there would be a couple from Guardians on the list.
Okay.
Whether they be above Steve, I don't know. I don't know. Whether they be above
Tony.
They be above.
Oh.
Drax might be above Tony for me.
Whoa.
Drax might be above Tony. Drax is interesting in this film because Drax doesn't get any heavy lifting, I would say, really to do narratively or thematically. He has this interesting relationship with Mantis, which I, as I've said before, I think is a surrogate father-daughter relationship. Everything he says is pretty much brilliant comic relief. But at the end of the last movie, he was talking about, he doesn't need to kill Ronan anymore, but he's going to turn his attentions towards Thanos. But there's really none of that in this film. He is just a wrecking device comedically and in terms of action as well.
Yeah.
Back to the question, which
Sure.
is about Yondu's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
Where do
Okay.
we think it ranks? Because you're pinning an awful lot of emotion on a character I don't know that any of us were that connected to first time around.
Well, I think I definitely felt his death because I think in this movie he earned it. I think his character became quite well rounded, and I appreciated the sacrifice he made. I think come the end of this movie, but at the start of the first movie, he felt maybe a little undeveloped. He was just a strange-looking man with a funny darts. And he
Is that Jim Bowen?
That's right. Yeah.
Let's take a look at what you could have won, Quill.
But no, I thought his arc in this movie was really interesting, and his relationships with Sylvester Stallone's character and this sort of whole backstory of having to deal with this ridiculous ego planet. And essentially being forced into adopting Peter. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought it was quite well handled. So his death kind of, worked for me.
What other deaths have there been in the MCU that stuck?
Quicksilver?
Oh, yeah. That was
Frigga?
I mean, yeah.
If you haven't seen those films,
Sorry.
by the
This
way.
is the entire MCU
Yeah.
spoiler special, apparently.
In terms of the big ones that have stuck, it's interesting. I still wonder to this day whether Tony Stark knows that Coulson's alive. I still wonder that. I still wonder if
Yeah,
Steve
that's a good
and
point,
Tony
isn't
and the
it?
rest of the Avengers know that Coulson is alive because their paths have not
They're
crossed.
still avenging him.
They're still that's the sole reason they're doing what they're
Yeah.
doing. Otherwise, they just let the whole
We've
thing
got to
burn.
do it
There's
for
some-
Coulson.
Coulson's over there, guys. He's at the drinks
He's
machine.
literally in the same
No,
building.
he's actually doing some really cool stuff at the moment in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I haven't caught up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all.
This has been a good
Yeah?
season. Yeah,
Really? I'm hearing
yeah.
this might be the last season, actually.
Well-
that the viewing figures are still going.
Yeah, but if they're going out on a high, so...
It's always dangerous to whistle in the Guardians of the Galaxy podcast in case an arrow rips through the wall and beds itself in us. What do you think about Yondu? Do you think that he was given enough this time around to
I think he was
justify
given
that?
plenty this
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I really think he was. He was given massively more than he was last time. And Michael Rooker's great. He does good stuff with it. Do we need two father complexes in one film? I mean, that's another question. But no, he was really good with it. I think also this is another of my sort of structural problems with the film. If you are going to have two father
fight between the
figures,
dads.
there should be a moment between them. There should be and there wasn't really that face off, which I find unsatisfying as well.
You're right. Quill and Yondu don't really share a scene until the very end, until pretty much the moment that
But also,
Yondu decides to sacrifice
Yondu
himself
and
for
Ego,
Quill.
they should have a bit more of a...
Yeah, this is Yondu and Ego, who, of course, Yondu has, disobeyed Ego's orders.
Exactly. Taken Quill for himself,
Yeah.
essentially, raised him instead.
Well, my big problem with the film was how do you have Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone in the film and not have them in the same frame together, not do a Tango and Cash thing?
I mean, how do you do that?
How do you do that?
How are you not thinking of Tango and Cash at all moments?
Which is why I'd like to revise my star rating downwards to 1 star. The Yondu father figure thing. I think you're absolutely right. I think there could have been a little bit more in there, but the nature of the plot, I guess, meant that they had to keep Quill and Yondu and Ego apart from each other for a long, long time. The interesting thing at the James Gunn interview is that he feels that Yondu is also a father figure for Rocket in the film, which is one of those very, very quick character arc things that you get only in movies. Only in movies does someone spend like an hour with someone and then considers them to be a father figure.
I mean, I didn't get father figure from their conversation, which they had where they were clearly sort of bonding.
Yeah.
It didn't seem father-son. It seemed equals. It seemed like they were identifying they had the same issues.
Yeah.
That didn't seem like a father-son thing. That seemed like a I'm just like you thing. And so I didn't really get Rocket's devastation. I got Rocket's devastation about Yondu's death. It felt more like Rocket had, I don't know, learned something about himself from Yondu's death, or experienced some kind of hope for himself. Because if Yondu's capable of heroism, maybe so am I, sort of thing. So I think there was something effective there, but I certainly didn't get any kind of father-son thing from it.
If Yondu is capable of reconciling with the people that he pushed away for years,
yes,
whether it's Dakar or whether it's Quill, then I think Rocket maybe feels the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because Rocket is all, again, it's all ego, and it's all he's frightened and he's terrified of admitting that these people that he hangs around with are his friends. It's a bit like you guys. I mean, you're colleagues, and but would I ever look you in the eye and tell you that I love you like a brother, John, and like a sister, Helen? I don't think I ever. I don't.
Please don't, Chris.
Chris, from this conversation, you're like a father to me.
Over the years, I've come to regard you all as people I met.
While we're still on the topic of Yondu, let's answer the question that at least a dozen of you sent in. The first one came from Almond Brown. What scene in your Guardians of the Galaxy review are you referring to when you describe a tasteless misstep? I love the film. I'm racking my brains to think of what event warranted such criticism. It was indeed the Ravager massacre. It was the sequence where 3 of our heroes just straight up kill a bunch of dudes. Which I know that they're bad guys. And I know that the Ravagers are established as even worse guys. First time around especially, this really jarred for me, though, because it is a massacre sequence.
Well, there's an earlier massacre where they massacre a bunch of people, which already felt like, wow, that's not what happens in these films. You lock them up in the brig. You don't throw them into space.
Yeah.
But obviously that was kind of foreshadowing. Oh, look what happens when you put a body in a vacuum, basically.
Yeah.
Not your Hoover at home, the other kind. And then, but then you're right. I mean, hundreds of people? There's hundreds of people in that scene, right? It feels like hundreds.
Yeah.
It's certainly scores of people. And they fully murder them. Now, and it's not even like I think it was meant to echo the prison escape in Guardians 1 in the sense that, it looked somewhat similar with all the walkways and the multiple levels and so on. But that was people who were directly in their way, directly fighting them. This was not. This was people who were on the ship. It did feel weird.
Now, of course, you could, and weirdly enough, I hit upon this while talking to James Gunn about it, and suddenly I kind of saw what he was going for with the. If you listen to the interview, you'll hear that moment. But I kind of realised what he was going for with that sequence, because we were talking about Rocket and Yondu and father figures and all that sort of stuff, and it suddenly hit me that to Rocket, participating in this massacre is a bit like Quill playing catch with ego. It's something that is fun, and the cool dude who he sees as daddy, obviously connected with him very quickly, but hey, everything's exaggerated in the movies like this. And it's like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And it's not like Rocket and Groot are not without their foibles.
Yeah.
But because we have the sequence in the first movie where Yondu again kills all of those Ronin's cohorts with the arrow, and there's a sequence which I still love where Groot kills a whole bunch of them and then turns around and grins at everybody.
Yeah.
But those were kind of, wasn't there? They were necrocons or something. I can't remember the actual name for them, but they were necro soldiers. They were essentially dead people who were being killed again. And the problem I had first time around was, as bad as the Ravagers on the ship, led by Taserface, as bad as they are, you're still watching our heroes straight up like just massacre people. And there was a couple of scenes of the arrow going through people's chests, and I thought, this is a bit much. Yeah. Second and third time I slightly mitigated those concerns, but it is still a big flaw for me.
I was okay with it, though. I was okay with it partly because
really?
it's
okay with massacres, eh?
Yeah, I am actually pro mass murder. No, I think that worked for me for a couple of reasons. One is that it's just purely enjoyable and entertaining to watch. It's shot in such a fun way, and that music I think really fits. It's such a sort of strange, incongruous, joyful bit of pop music next to these harrowing deaths shot in slow motion and all this sort of thing. But also I just think that's okay. First of all, it's Yondu who is not a hero by any stretch. I mean, he was never presented as one of the original team. He's never tried to be a good guy. So this is not outside of the his realm of possibility. And with Rocket and Groot, I mean, these are the Guardians. These are not the Avengers.
Yeah.
And their MO is a little of bad, little of good. A bit of both.
But the interesting
this
thing
is a bit of bad.
The interesting thing to me is that so many people wrote in asking what that tasteless misstep was. That clearly it was maybe just me. I don't know whether you felt strongly about it the first time, but it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. I had to get myself back into it. And I asked James Gunn, was there pushback? Did people say you'd gone too far with this? And he said, no, absolutely, it was fine. So maybe it's me. Just I don't know.
You are a fainting violet, Chris.
I am a little bit, maybe, but
but no, it was weird to see that many people killed in a big, colourful summer blockbuster.
But obviously, we welcome it, and no, it's all good. But while we're talking about the song, which was "Come a Little Bit Closer" by I believe Jay and the Americans. Let me just check. I've got it on my phone. Yes, Jay and the Americans. What do we think of the soundtrack?
Loved it. Loved it.
I didn't like it as much as the first one.
Okay.
Loved it, Helen. Loved it.
I apologise.
Helen, you love it.
I loved it.
Loved it.
Do you prefer the soundtrack to Fast 8? Did you, Helen?
No.
Okay.
Come on, there's got to be some hope for me.
Oh, it's so good. Come on. I really love some of the choices here. I think Fleetwood Mac.
I did like the Fleetwood Mac. That was my favourite.
Superb.
How do you use the chain, right? And then not use the bit that they used for the theme from Formula 1 on the BBC?
I think quite easily.
Doom, 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 doom.
Yeah, but this bit worked better.
And then, Senna and Prost and Mansell.
Mr. Blue Sky in the opening scene was just a joy. It was just a pure joy from start to finish.
Yeah,
I did love the opening scene. Not so much for the music, though, which I think was fine, but just the idea of that. Let's focus on
the concept
Baby Groot
of having
chasing,
the action in the background was genius, and it really showed a bit of confidence that they're much more interested in a baby tree dancing than they are the actual action. I thought that's
no, absolutely. The confidence of this movie, all the way through, even through the flaws, gets it past the flaws. I think it gets it past. I mean, the Ravagers massacre is presented with such confidence that even though it jarred me at first, this second and third time around, I can begin to appreciate the artistry, for want of a better word, of that sequence where Yondu's watching everyone on the screens and the arrow, which is really powerful. My God, that would give the Hulk an issue.
That thing, how do you recharge it anyway? How does it work? It's Bluetooth, of course.
It's Bluetooth. Everything's Bluetooth.
I really liked the use of My Sweet Lord by George Harrison as we
you would, because
I am George Harrison.
You are George Harrison.
But yeah, it did feel a bit like a sort of... like a Hindu paradise or something.
It's a little on the nose, the use of that. It's Semekisian in its in its on the noseness, but it's such a great song. I think going through the two soundtracks, because I'm doing a lot of running to these soundtracks at the moment. I think that this is a better soundtrack. I genuinely do. I think that there's all killer no filler in this one, whereas on the last one, I think there were a couple that maybe didn't quite work. Spirit in the Sky, I'm not a big fan of that song.
Yeah, Spirit in the Sky I don't like. But Ooh
Go
Child,
all the way.
I loved.
And Ooga Chaka. That's a good one. I believe is the name of the song.
That's correct. Ooga Chaka.
Ooga Chaka.
But this one, I think it begins really well with Brandy, which is used all the way through the film.
Brandy.
In fact, if you notice, when Kurt Russell goes for a whiz after first meeting Peter, he's whistling Brandy.
He's whistling Brandy, yeah.
And it becomes a thematic concern throughout the film. Mr. Blue Sky's great. Fox on the Run is on the soundtrack, but not in the film. It's on the trailer. There you go. But some really great stuff on there as well. Great stuff on the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 soundtrack. We've got a question now from Chris Rogers. Are we just going to forget that a small town in America is now coated in grey-blue gloop?
It's a good question. Presumably there are entire cities there on various planets that are now weird things. But then there seemed to be a suggestion that people were kind of restored after it vanished, right?
Was there?
Wasn't there?
Is there?
Isn't there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I got to say, my heart sank a little bit when the big bloop just started overtaking. It was like, oh God, more cities have to be destroyed.
Was
today.
it a deliberate nod to the Blob?
I think it was.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to ask James Gunn that, but I think it was. He's a B movie guy.
Yeah.
Did anyone notice Greg Henry?
I did. Yes.
as Quill's granddad.
Only second time around, actually, because
Really?
the aging makeup was thick.
And he's
on
in
him.
the credits dancing at the end as well.
Right.
He does
Yeah.
a little granddad dancing move.
Nice.
It just James Gunn cannot make movies without Michael Rooker. He will have to. I think he'll bring Yondu back somehow. Flashbacks. I can't see Yondu coming back because that would cheapen it. But I think he'll bring it back somehow. But there's got to be a scene, I'd imagine, in Avengers: Infinity War between
With Clark Gregg.
Quill and Greg Henry.
Greg Henry, rather. Not
Yeah.
Clark Gregg.
Clark Gregg and Greg Henry. The two
Clark Gregg
Gregs.
and Greg Henry. Awesome.
Yeah. Are we going to? A few people have written in as well asking, is it weird because it's never mentioned in the MCU that there's a town in Missouri covered in grey, blue gloop? Not
Probably
everything-
S.H.I.E.L.D. dealt with it. It's
Yeah.
probably
I
fine.
don't know. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the
Yeah.
MCU.
Yeah, there's clear inference whenever we hook up again with the Avengers at the beginning of Age of Ultron that they've been on many, many missions and they've done lots of shit together.
Yeah.
And this is just one of their little side
Yeah.
missions. They send someone in to clean it up.
Maybe that does deal with my one problem with the Thor Ragnarok trailer, because I loved it more than rainbows. But the idea that Thor would consider avenging work seemed odd to me. But maybe he's done enough that he does. Maybe they really have been working that hard.
Yeah, they probably pay quite well. Shield, they've probably got a good.
He's an
Good
alien
benefits
god.
package.
I mean, does he really need
Still
dental?
needs healthcare. Yeah, he still needs insurance.
I've stubbed my toe. At Quizmaster PW75 asks, do you think the Sly Stallone group of Guardians will feature in future MCU films?
Yes,
Just Guardians 3, I suspect.
Yeah.
I think I was surprised when Stallone came on screen, and I was expecting a big cameo moment, and it wasn't that. It was more like character setup moments. Do you know what I mean? It didn't feel like, it wasn't like Hasselhoff, where it's like, look, it's this guy, it's this famous guy. It was like, we're setting up a character who will take a bigger role in future movies, and I think that's what's going to happen, isn't it? Guardians 3. The team of Ravagers.
Well, James Gunn has already said, again, not with me. What did he say to me? I don't know. But he said lots of good stuff to me, but he said in another interview, in fact, no, this was on Twitter, he said that this iteration of the Guardians, their story will be completed in Guardians 3.
Okay.
So I'd imagine that there will be a Guardians 4 and a Guardians 5, but it will be a radically different team. And that actually surprised me a little bit, because as radically as the Avengers change from the beginning of Age of Ultron to the end, when it's almost a completely different team, and by the end, of course, of Civil War, where it's essentially Tony and a crippled Rhodey, a discombobulated Vision, and Spider-Man on the emergency roster just in case. It changed so completely. In this one, they don't really change that much. They add Mantis to the roster, I guess.
Arguably Nebula as well.
But she goes off and does her own thing at the
Yeah.
end. Yondu is dead, and Kraglin, as we discussed with James Gunn, is basically, he's just a guy who hangs around. He doesn't really necessarily have voting rights. What did we think of that? Did you expect the team to undergo a lot of changes?
No, actually, I don't think I did. I felt like there was enough kind of new blood there with Mantis and Yondu taking such a bigger part, that it didn't feel in any way stale or anything. So, yeah, I was kind of okay with that.
This is from @Nandy Selson. Were you surprised there were no Infinity Stones in this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
I felt like there'd be more set up for Infinity War, and I'm genuinely surprised that this feels very standalone. I mean, I thought it would be quite standalone just because of James Gunn's character, and also because of the success of the first film. I thought they saw what they wanted to do with this, and they were fairly confident in it. But the almost, to me, complete lack of linkage is quite surprising.
Refreshing, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe, but I just, we haven't got that much time left, and, I was expecting I'm not saying I wanted a 20-minute subplot, but like a throwaway reference to something, I think would have been
I quite liked that it
worthwhile.
was sort of on its own. I mean, I was thinking, I rewatched Civil War recently, and I was thinking, if you'd never seen an MCU movie and you went into Civil War completely blind, you wouldn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, it's all sorts of characters coming in from all over, and all sorts of backstories and subplots, and it demands having seen the entire thing. And I kind of like that Guardians is its own beast, and you can just approach it fresh, and it sort of exists in and of itself. I mean, are there other Infinity Stones out there? How many?
Yeah,
how
there's
many?
one left.
There's
One
one
more.
left
Yeah.
floating
Soul.
in space somewhere.
The Soul Stone, which
So-
the smart money would be on.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, it's turning up there. But Thor Ragnarok has to do so much if it is indeed going to reveal the last Infinity Stone and going to lead directly into. I mean, I know Black Panther comes out before Infinity War, but Thor Ragnarok you would imagine would be the real lead in
Yeah.
to that movie. And if there is an Infinity Stone in there, it's going to have to do an awful lot of heavy lifting
But
with
then-
the Hulk and Doctor Strange and Odin and Loki and all that sort of
What's
stuff.
been good about Marvel's approach to the Infinity Stones throughout is that it's built them in as other MacGuffins, and it
Yeah.
hasn't been focusing on them as Infinity Stones. It's been focusing on them as the Tesseract, the Scepter, whatever. So you've got to hope that they can just throw it in there somewhere.
I mean,
and not
who's to
spend
say
too
it
much
won't
time
just
on
show
it.
up for the first time in Infinity War?
Jeff Goldblum could be wearing it on his wrist. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a big doohickey. It could just be a thing that exists.
At Jenny_Smith asks, where did Kraglin get another red fin from? Yondu's was turned into space dust. Did Rocket build him another? We can't answer that absolutely definitively, but I would imagine that's the way of it. Rocket
I
is
guess so.
a genius inventor.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun watching him with Tony Stark.
Oh, now I want to see that.
Are they going to try and outdo each other in the invention stakes? But I would imagine that's what happened. This is from Mark Fawcett. Who would the pod pick to be Adam Warlock in Guardians 3? I've got one.
Okay.
If this doesn't happen, because I think we were one of the first people to say Kurt Russell should be Quill's dad, right? Years ago,
Okay.
we said that.
Sure.
All right, and Marvel listened because they they listen to this podcast and they take notes. All right, so
God help
so
them.
Kevin Feige, take your pen out, take the cap off the pen, put the pen to paper, write this down. Army Hammer. Mic drop. It's got to happen. It's got to happen. It's got to happen.
Army Hammer.
Big, blonde, arrogant dude. Not that Army Hammer's arrogant. He's not. But
Seems very nice, in fact.
seems lovely. But I think he would be the perfect embodiment of Adam Warlock. And get your dabs into him before the DC EU get him.
How about Channing Tatum?
No.
Okay.
Helen, you were meant to go. The minute I said Army Hammer, you were meant to go, yes!
Yes!
I see
Ooh.
it now. Of
Chris, you
course.
genius.
Oh, yeah. John, what do you think about Army Hammer?
Yes,
Yes,
Chris.
Chris, I think that's a great idea, and I would definitely cast Army Hammer.
That was a
Why
that
do I
was,
sound like Matt Berry?
That was just like you. Wow, that's amazing.
I don't know. Anything else you want to say when I'm looking for questions? Any closing thoughts? Let's talk about Nebula.
I really liked Nebula in this. I thought she was really good. And I liked that there was a sister relationship, because that is something that we don't see as often as we see father complexes. And so I thought that their sort of contentious relationship underpinning an actual need for each other, or certainly Nebula's need for Gamora, I thought was actually really good. And I liked that the big emotional beats for Gamora were not really her and Quill, although it seems weird to me that they haven't acted on that. But they were her and Nebula.
I had a few issues with that relationship. I felt they were literally trying to murder each other, like quite literally a fight to the death.
Yeah, but that's the
And
way they've
then-
been brought up.
But then they have a little chat, and then they're best mates. It was a bit Batman versus Superman.
But they weren't best
It was a
mates.
bit
I think that was the interesting thing. Like, you
Why
know,
did you say the name?
Yeah.
Thanos!
Gamora hugs Nebula. Nebula has real trouble hugging her back. Like, it's a really difficult
Yes.
thing for her to do. And I think they've been brought up fighting each other and then stopping fighting and going back to training alongside each other. So I feel like it sort of made a weird kind of
No,
sense.
logically it made sense. I just felt I don't know. I just didn't quite.
No, I'm just laughing at some of the stuff that Nebula does in this film. I think she's very, very good in this movie. Karen Gillan. There's that lovely moment where she shoots the fin off Yondu's head, and basically goes, "Hello there, boys," in a really sexy, seductive way. Just completely, she outguns them all instantly. You know that she's more than a match for everyone.
I do like the way that she makes really everyone uncomfortable. I find
Yes.
that quite amusing.
And she thinks they're all idiots.
Yeah.
And the thing is, she's right.
Yeah.
They are all idiots.
Yeah, she has a great line in Contempt, doesn't she?
Yeah, she really does.
So I thought she's very interesting. And again, many people have asked, do we think that she's going to be a bigger player in Infinity War? And we said at the beginning, I think she will be. And in fact, if you were to put the runners and riders right now for, who gets to pull the trigger on Thanos, if indeed it goes down that way in 3 or 4, she's got to be up there because she's got the emotional reason for wanting to kill Thanos.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting, especially someone who's not necessarily that powerful getting through his defenses.
You've got to worry that if she did kill Thanos, she'd die in the attempt. Like, I feel like that would be pretty nailed on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not, indeed. Baby Groot deployed perfectly. Too much Baby Groot? Not enough Baby Groot? Did we like the...
As I say, my only issue was I couldn't figure out how smart he was meant to be and how much he was meant to understand, because that just changed from minute to minute. So 1 minute he'd seem pretty down with everything, and the next minute just completely off with the fairies.
Yeah, did he understand English? I wasn't really sure. Or that whole scene where he gets
He does, yeah.
He gets the wrong things from the drawer, like a sawed off foot or something.
Like a severed toe.
So let's never speak of this again.
Yeah. I love that sequence. I thought it was great. I mean, you're playing with, are you pushing it too far with him bringing the silly things? Yeah. And then also that bizarre conversation he goes, he doesn't say I am Groot that often, but the thing about the hat, where he puts the little badge on his head like a hat, and he goes, and then Rocket has to translate for him. He goes, so you don't like hats because you look at a person and you realise that you think that their head is shaped like a hat, and then it's just a hat. Wait a minute, that's why you don't like hats?
Yeah.
It's a little bit complex for Baby Groot.
Exactly.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, but that's kind of what... Yeah, but that was my only issue with him, because of course he's adorable.
he's too adorable to kill.
Bring him to the tailor. Also, they have a tailor?
Well,
These guys are pirates and they had a tailor?
We have to assume that the tailor was arrowed.
Yeah,
perished in the massacre.
Maybe the tailor was a machine. That would make more sense. Like the replicator in Star Trek. It just seems weird that they would have a guy literally with a tape measure on their pirate ship.
A couple of last questions. Matthew Buck asks, does Ego say he was the only Celestial ever? No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
If so, what was a giant Celestial head / planet nowhere in Volume 1? It was another Celestial. Ego has not found any Celestials. I liked, by the way, that they brought Laura Haddock back as Meredith Quill. I think Also, I tell you what really moved me as well, and surprisingly so, was the sequence just as Quill is about to engage with Ego. He's about to fight Ego, and he thinks about his mum, and there's like a sequence of young Peter playing with Laura Haddock as Meredith Quill, and then there's a couple of sequences of a young Peter playing with Yondu, and there's a sequence of him flying through flying with jetpacks with Rocket. That sequence, which is soundless almost, that moved me. Seeing these glimpses of a life that we hadn't glimpsed before, it almost felt like, cutscenes from the movie, but it was really interesting. Anyway, that's just
Mummy
my
issues, Chris. God,
Not as played out though. Anyway,
who's cooler, Mary Poppins or Yondu screaming "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all"?
that's already on a T-shirt. So
Is it?
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Darren Crowley, why doesn't Baby Groot want to be seen dancing in front of Drax?
I think that was just a little nod back to the post-credit sting in the first film, but it did strike me as slightly odd. It was kind of weird. Maybe it's because Drax doesn't approve of dancers, and if Drax saw Baby Groot dancing, he wouldn't believe that he was also a fighter.
Absolutely. Here's another interesting one, and a few people have asked this. So Ghost Rider 365 asks, is Ego really dead?
I think so. Oh, you mean because if he's dead, then Peter doesn't have his superpowers anymore? Mm-hmm. I think he's dead.
I think he's dead.
Because that was part of that should have been, and I think it was slightly underdeveloped, that should have been part of the sort of the pathos or the difficulty for Peter of taking him on, is that he's by doing so giving up quite a lot of power himself. Mm-hmm. But having only just discovered it, maybe then it's not quite so. That was slightly underdeveloped, and maybe that was something that they could have done to give Peter a bit more emotional heft in this film. Yeah,
at certain points I was thinking, they've upgraded Peter's abilities because he doesn't have any apart from being a swaggering Lothario. they've upgraded him slightly in that, and to maybe be able to go toe to toe with some people in Infinity War, and then they take it away from him. And I thought it was really interesting.
The impression I got was he had some of these powers from being on the planet. Is that not?
No, he
how
had
it was?
some of the powers from the planet existing. I think.
So he wasn't drawing energy or.
He was drawing it from the planet, but
Right.
I think he would have been immortal even if he was away from the planet. Was the idea?
Okay.
But it is interesting. It's like how much of that is derived from the planet's existence, and how much of it is derived from Ego's existence, and how much of it is the fact that it is just in his genes. He's the only one of Ego's progeny who has the ability, who can do what Ego does, to a level that pleases Ego enough that he doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah. There is a wiggle room, isn't there,
Yeah.
for them to keep a little edge of something that would help him.
Yeah, he might still be able to hold an Infinity Stone for a few seconds at least, but I don't think he's turning into Pac-Man anytime soon.
That's
Or
fair.
indeed Paxman. None
That's
of those
true.
people.
Or Pac-Woman.
or Saxo.
Okay.
What do people think of Ego as a bad guy? Someone's asked, Gina Joxa has asked, is Loki still the best MCU villain, or did Ego outshine him?
Loki's still the best,
Yeah,
but
Loki
Ego was good.
is pretty safe, I would say. I think Ego was great. I thought Kurt Russell was dependably brilliant. I thought his beard was magnificent. I thought he looked every bit the celestial planet god. As I've said, I have a lot of issues with evil plan, monologue, evil plan, which I just thought just came out of him free will.
Yeah.
But no, he was. I think he was a good villain.
Yeah, I think he was good. With the caveat of my plot problems I've already kind of identified, and that you've already identified about. He comes through quite late on as a villain. So there were also shades of there were shades of Dr. Manhattan as well in his regeneration, and I think just because visually it looked really similar to those cartoon strips, and
I love
that was distracting.
I love to nod to his comic book design. At one point, you see the planet. And
Yes,
it
with the
has
face.
an angry face, which is pretty cool. I liked him. I liked him a lot. Some people are wondering why he looked younger in 1980. I think because he was away from the planet, he gets a little bit older. But
it may also be a conscious choice to try to appear more father-like to Quill. I suspect. I think there's an element of he actually says at one point before when he turns into Hasselhoff, I tried to take a form that would be pleasing to you. I can't remember the exact word, but
that's exact words.
So he's clearly trying to appear fatherific.
By the way, the Hasselhoff cameo I loved. I thought to get someone like Hasselhoff in for 2.5 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. I mean, that was pretty ballsy. I liked it.
Plus dancing at the end, I think, in the credits.
Yes.
And of course he appears on the song as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
yes.
Guardians Inferno.
Voice of an angel.
Yeah, Sardu Hasselfrau is back.
It's the voice that tore down the Berlin Wall.
Two last things to very, very quickly talk about. We've talked about every different character permutation in this film except for Quill and Gamora. What do we make of that? They don't go full Han and Leia in this, but there is certainly indications that they will be doing the bumpy uglies very, very soon.
I don't think anything those people have is ugly. I don't quite understand why you wouldn't if you were those two, given where we saw them at the end of the last film. But yeah, I mean, I guess the sort of will they won't they thing was a thing that was still going on, but it just didn't make sense to me. I didn't get why it wasn't happening already, I guess.
Yeah, I guess maybe she's got issues.
I mean, they're all
trust
of issues, sure.
over time, and I guess the thing is, like, he genuinely likes this woman, which is unusual for Quill, I'd imagine, and he doesn't want to blow it. He doesn't want to Quill it up.
Yeah.
Maybe
but
he
like
doesn't
she
wanna...
was kissing him on the cheek at the end of the last film, so
Was
there
she?
was clearly I wasn't there.
She puts his hand on her. She puts her hand on his shoulder at the end of at the end of the film.
Yeah, but there was an element of ease to that and an element of closeness.
There's an element of certainly just a suggestion, and don't forget it's only a few months later.
Yeah.
So there's a suggestion that this might be going somewhere. Maybe what they need to do is they need to have a Guardians of the Galaxy office Christmas party, and just get absolutely fucking shit faced, and just go for it on the printer at the back of the
Lord.
at the back of the Milano. I'm just suggesting it.
Right.
It's an option. It's open to them again. Kevin, if you're listening to this.
And I hope you're not.
I like their relationship. I think it's interesting. I thought the Cheers thing was maybe a bit too far, but yeah, otherwise I thought it was pretty much nailed on. And Gamora, I thought was pretty funny in this. I loved the bit where she went, "I don't know what Cheers is," and just yelled it. And then the very last thing, loads of people have asked us this: where would you rate this in the MCU? Does this make your top 10? Does it make your top 5? Is it better than the first? What do you think?
No.
Where does it rate in the MCU? No.
No, it doesn't make my top 10, top 5. Better than the first? No, to all of those probably.
Okay, it doesn't make your top 10.
I don't think so.
It's only 15 movies,
There's only 15,
right?
yeah.
So I think it comfortably makes the top 10 for me. Maybe not the top 5, but
it doesn't make the top 5 for me. Guardians 1 is still in the top 5 for me, and depending on my mood, is number 1 for me. This is top 10, but I don't know where in that top 10 just yet. I need to let the
I
let the
do
dust
need
another
a
5
I do
or
need
6
a piece
more
of
viewings should do it.
I do need a piece of paper and a pen to work out exactly where it falls. But
let's go
I think
and make a spreadsheet, shall we?
Let's make a spreadsheet.
Let's do that.
Awesome.
We're going to do a spreadsheet, and we're going to do we'll make a list of the favourite MCU characters as well. We can fight about where Tony and Steve come in at.
Yeah, Steve comes top.
Actually, yeah. Very we shall see. Right, that is it for this very, very special edition of the Empire Podcast, our Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 spoiler special. Thank you so much for listening. Do join us every Friday for our regular pod. If you don't already subscribe, please go to iTunes and do that. If you want to leave us some nice 5-star reviews, that would be just fine and dandy as well. Our next spoiler special is Alien Covenant with Sir Ridley Scott himself.
Yes.
Yeah? That's happened.
That has happened. That is in the bag.
Keep your eyes peeled for that. That's probably going to be around May 15th, 16th, something like that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. It's goodbye from John.
Uga Chaka.
It's goodbye from Helen.
Uga Chaka.
And it's goodbye from me. Uga Chaka, I guess. No, it didn't work. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.